Warning. The following podcast contains spoilers for the film discussed, as well as strong language. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to the latest installment of How Have We Not Seen? I'm Juliet.
I'm Nate.
I'm Mitch.
And this week it is Nate's turn to pick the movie, and he has been so excited. He can't wait for it. He's like a kid on Christmas.
He's literally giddy.
Yep. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are watching 1954's Godzilla,
Yay!
also known in its homeland as Godzilla.
Does that literally translate to Godzilla, or does it translate to something else?
It means Godzilla. It's a portmanteau of their word for gorilla and their word for whale.
Gorilla whale.
Gorilla and Kujira.
He's a gorilla whale.
It's supposed to imply that he's some sort of massive, vicious, ape-like beast with the size and aquatic nature of a whale. Don't take it too seriously. He's not.
He's a giant lizard.
like mixing words together have different connotations in other languages.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right, ask the question.
So then, our first question is, guys, how the hell have you not seen this? This is one of the most iconic movies of all time. The most iconic monster movie of all time. Like, this has been parodied, homaged, referenced in so many different works of fiction, from children's cartoons to, comedies to dramas and stuff like that, to documentaries. How the hell have you not seen this one?
I've had no need to.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
But in all honesty, I've just never had the urge to. Like you said, it's been everywhere, and I've got the basic gist of it. Hell, I saw, what was it, 2012, 13?
The 2014 one?
Yeah,
Bryan Cranston?
Yeah, that was good, in my opinion.
This one is far different.
Yeah, I could tell that.
Now, Juliet, what about you?
I'm on the same page as Mitch. I never felt a burning need to watch this movie. I also thought that maybe I would watch this with my dad because he watches a lot of Japanese movies too, and we watch a lot of the Universal monster movies, so I thought this was going to pop up at some point. So, yeah, it's a mixture of those two things.
Alright then, so what are your expectations for this movie going to be like?
I'm expecting effects that haven't aged well but are charming. Oh, that's cute. You know what I mean? How some effects that haven't aged well that are bad, but some it's aw.
It's charmingly bad due to the age.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just expecting to have just a good time. That's all I'm expecting.
How about you, Mitch? What are your expectations for this movie?
I'm expecting either subtitles or really bad English dub.
We're doing subtitles.
Okay, good.
Oh, thank God.
Because we would probably be making fun of the English dub nonstop.
Oh, I wouldn't.
The English dub is actually, I'll get into this later, but it's actually quite different from the original movie.
Oh, okay.
They were a lot more pragmatic.
Didn't that one have Perry Mason in it too? Because they thought Americans would
Raymond
watch
Burr,
a Japanese
yes,
movie?
the actor who plays Perry Mason.
Yeah.
So, this is quite interesting to see what your expectations for this movie are. We will get back to you after watching Godzilla.
He's coming!
Wish us luck.
And we're back! So, guys, what were your thoughts on Godzilla? Mitch?
It was good. I liked it. It was, I wasn't expecting too much. I wasn't sure what to expect, seeing as how I'm not into really classic movies, and, I haven't really seen much of Godzilla apart from, like I said earlier, the 2014 edition with Bryan Cranston. But it was good. It had a lot more to it than I was expecting, so I can understand why Nate likes it so much. Juliet?
This movie took me pleasantly by surprise. I really liked it. I agree with Mitch. It was more nuanced than I was expecting because with action movies in America, and I know that Godzilla is more of a monster movie than an action movie per se, it's the plot comes secondary, but I was totally invested in the characters that I saw, and you really cared about them. And there's one in particular that got me very emotional towards the end. I didn't cry, but it made me very sad. And yeah, this movie surpassed my expectations. Good job.
As soon as you're saying, I'm expecting something that's pleasant on the eyes, kind of like, you were thinking more of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s kind of Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
The ones that everyone thinks of when they think of Godzilla. But a lot of people don't know that the first Godzilla movie is a horror movie.
Yeah.
I don't mean a monster movie. I mean a horror movie.
I can't imagine what the Japanese audiences thought.
Exactly. This is this was a movie for an audience for whom the atomic bombings were closer to the Japanese who first watched Godzilla than 9/11 is to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The impact of those bombs was still felt everywhere and in everyone to that day when that movie was made.
Almost
and what made it
literally.
even more fresh, and that was something that they referenced with the beginning of the movie with the fishing boat. In 1954, earlier that year, the United States did a massive nuclear test, the largest bomb ever initiated by the United States, called Castle Bravo, and the fallout was much larger than they were expecting. It was 3 times more powerful than they had planned.
Oh, shit.
And the fallout spread so far that it forced a bunch of people from a bunch of Pacific islands to evacuate, and a Japanese fishing boat got caught in the fallout.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
And so, when they thought they were finally getting over the wounds of the bomb, suddenly it's brought back to their minds this fresh new horror of atomic warfare and nuclear fallout. And this is what we felt. Godzilla is more than just a monster portrayed by a man in a suit. This is the embodiment of our fears of the nuclear age.
Yeah.
He was designed specifically to evoke those fears. Initially, they were going to go something unoriginal, uninspired, like an octopus. And then they realized like what they could do with this. Godzilla, you know the weird bumps along his skin, right? How he looks almost burnt.
Is that from the H-bomb?
They designed it based off of the keloid scars that people got from the blast in Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Yeah.
God.
You can see it further. The aftermath of Godzilla's attack in Tokyo, the city, like the rubble, they designed it specifically to look like the kind of wreckage left behind in Hiroshima.
That's what it reminded me of, like seeing all
Oh,
those
yeah.
pictures and textbooks growing
I mean,
up.
like, everyone just thinks it's going to be, cheap extras running around screaming while 2 guys in monster suits, slug it
No.
out in a cheap cardboard city. But what we see instead are people screaming from their wounds in hospitals, children crying as their mothers die. That one scene where Emiko and that scientist are just scanning the kid with a Geiger counter, and that thing is just going nuts, and you realize this kid has hours to live. And just the sad shake of his head. Like, this is deep stuff that you would not find. Like, this is something that you will not find in subsequent Godzilla movies for decades.
It makes
Yeah.
you realize the ramifications of our country's actions. Like, we obviously, now we know that the H-bomb was what we did when we dropped it on Hiroshima. And
Well,
Nagasaki
that was
a
the
tragedy.
A-bomb.
The A-bomb, excuse me. Dropping it on Japan, we understand it was a tragedy, but seeing this movie really makes you understand it even better from the Japanese perspective. And also watching this, it makes you also realize that the American version probably screwed up this movie and maybe dampened down the emotional impact that this one has.
Are you talking about the one with Raymond Burr?
I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't seen the, I was thinking more of, the English dub.
That's
not
what
the
I
one with
meant.
Raymond Burr.
That
He was
is
in that
the
one.
English dub.
Okay.
They do less of just dubbing over everyone's voices in English, but there are scenes where they do that. A lot more of the reporter, watching from afar, and, his friends are translating for him as he's, observing the events. And he himself gets injured in Godzilla's attack. He's in a news building and he gets hit. It also spawned the miscalculation about Godzilla's size. In this one, they say that he's 50 meters tall, 164 feet.
Yeah.
But in the English dub, they describe him as 400 feet tall.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Why increase the size?
Maybe they felt that they needed something bigger to impress the Americans.
165 feet is pretty big. Oh, of course, make everything bigger in America. They
But-
supersized him.
Ha.
Basically.
Ugh.
But, seriously, this movie it's almost too good to exist in this genre.
It's aged really well,
This is the
too.
reason why people remember Godzilla so much compared to other monster movies. There were other monster movies like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which helped inspire Godzilla. You got shitty movies like Gorgo, or It Conquered the World, and all these other movies. But the reason why Godzilla is remembered is because it has heart, and because it has heart, you can feel terror, true horror from this movie.
Should we talk about the heart with some of the characters?
I think we should delve into the characters. Yes.
Okay, Mitch has the list. Who do you want to start with? Should we go in order or jump around?
I mean, there are a decent amount of characters we could talk about, but not too many. Why not start with Ogata?
Yeah.
I feel that Ogata is one of the... I'm not sure I can say as much about him as I can say about the other characters. He's
not bland, but he's not really developed that well.
He's the knight in shining armor for Emiko.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's the hot-headed, fiery person that we need But that doesn't mean
Yeah.
we can appreciate him as well as we can appreciate the other characters.
But I wouldn't say hot-headed is the right adjective because he's not. He does have a temper, but he's not a dick about it.
I would, yes.
I wouldn't say
I get what you mean, though.
He's the Japanese version of hot-headed.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there isn't that much about to say about Ogata.
He did raise some good points in in his little conversation with Yamane, I believe his name was. Yamane. You know, like, yeah, we should be studying this thing, but people are
It's killing
dying.
a lot of people, yeah.
I still love Dr. Yamane's character, though, because, like, he represents, like, the raw enthusiasm for science. And oftentimes they're kind of portrayed as either the bad guys or the misunderstood experts in these sort of movies. But in this case, Yamane, he brings, like, a human element to this when it comes to science that we don't often, like, see in these movies, so to say.
Yeah.
Like, you can feel his disappointment at the fact that they have to kill Godzilla.
Yeah.
That was his obsession.
Yeah.
But he's not dangerously obsessed either.
No, and he's not being malicious about it either.
And
even at the end, though, like,
the way how he sadly says that there are probably more of Godzilla's species out there.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, there is.
Yeah. I mean,
Alright.
that's how you get to the sequels.
I think,
Yeah.
well, Godzilla's continuity isn't. Alright, I should rephrase that.
Yeah.
There are two main Godzilla continuities, and they reset in the 80s, so to say. So you have the initial line, which are nicknamed the Showa because they came out during the time that the Showa Emperor Hirohito was still alive. So it marks Godzilla's transition from the horror of the nuclear age to actually a hero.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
I've
did
seen
hear
somewhere
about...
he's a hero.
Yeah, the second one, like that's what the second one introduces a lot more of the stuff that people are more familiar with Godzilla, such as fighting other monsters and stuff like that, and getting defeated but not killed at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Like he gets trapped in an iceberg or trapped in a volcano or stuff like that. But in those movies, Godzilla eventually actually becomes a heroic character, which leads to some saying that Godzilla is less a metaphor just for nuclear power or the dangers of the nuclear bomb, and more of a metaphor for the United States. How, in the immediate aftermath of World War II, it was a horrifying, terrifying force.
You could theoretically
And then,
say that.
like, 1954, by then, Japan still hadn't recovered from its pre-war economic levels.
No.
It was still rebuilding from the war. And then, as the economy gets better, and the United States seems more and more of a friendly presence, that's when Godzilla becomes a hero.
I can get that, but that's not what it originally started out as, but I can get why people think that. Yeah.
Like, I myself don't personally agree with that, but I still think it's interesting to discuss regardless.
I remember hearing a lot about this movie just because of you. 'Cause
Yeah.
You've been wanting us to watch this for God knows how many years.
Years.
Yeah.
Literally years.
I am
He's literally obsessed.
As obsessed as
Yamane?
yeah.
But I wasn't originally gonna see Godzilla 2014, but he's the one who brought me.
I can name all the Godzilla movies in order of release.
Yeah.
I can do that right now.
Like, I know I didn't say I was expecting much, but I was expecting a decent amount just based off of what you told me and what little clips I saw online of this. And one thing I really liked in this movie was just generally the miniatures.
Oh, I want to go into detail about that, but I'm going to save that for later.
Yeah.
I want to keep on talking about the characters for now.
Okay, let's talk about Emiko.
Yeah.
Emiko. I think Emiko represents the heart of the group, so to say. If it weren't for her, Serizawa would not have been convinced. It was his love for her that allowed Ogata and the others to reach to him and convince him to use the oxygen destroyer.
I feel it was more about the girls singing, but
Yeah,
that
that's
was
what I
that
think,
was
too.
the tipping point. But it was Emiko who learned of the oxygen destroyer through Serizawa because Serizawa loves her, and then it was through her that she got Ogata to start putting the pressure on Serizawa. Her that started making him reconsider, and then the song was what finally clinched it. And that song is something I also want to talk about later. But continuing back to Emiko, yes. I think if she didn't exist, Serizawa would not have used the oxygen destroyer.
I also think that with Emiko, when you're writing a love triangle, it doesn't matter if it's for a film, for a play, or for a book, it's always really tricky to navigate because you don't want to make any of the characters seem unlikable or selfish or like, you know what I mean?
Or like a homewrecker.
A homewrecker, yeah, but the way she handled her relationship with Ogata and I don't want to butcher his name. Serizawa. The way she handled her relationship with the two of them, she was very mature, and it's clear she cared for both of those men very much, but for different reasons. So, like, she even said, if I go to him and I talk to him, that'll be letting him down more gently.
Yeah.
Which I thought, you know what? Props to her, because most girls would be like, you talk to him for me, I can't deal with it. So that just shows she has a lot of inner strength, too.
Like, she did care for him.
Exactly, and this is when I want to get into, like, the other star of this movie, aside from Godzilla himself.
Is Serizawa?
Serizawa.
Oh my god!
This guy, Serizawa, in my opinion, is what makes this movie, like, him and Godzilla together are the are the real stars of this movie.
And he could have easily been the mad scientist trope too, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
He was a martyr for science.
Serizawa is honestly, like, as speaking of somebody who is very well versed in Godzilla fandom, Serizawa is like one of the sacred cows of the fandom. Like, no matter your opinions on all the movies that came subsequently, everyone agrees that Serizawa is like one of the, if not the best human characters in the franchise.
Yeah. He has a great character
and
arc.
often, and every once in a while, he comes up in a joke when people are asking, like, who's the most powerful, like, monster in the series? And you say, Dr. Serizawa. He killed Godzilla.
Yeah.
He's the first one to do it.
He is.
Yeah.
And for decades, he's the only one to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He succeeded where King Ghidorah fails.
He's also, like, a great representation, in my opinion, of, like, I don't want to say, like, an anti-mad scientist, but, like, the type of
our fears about the continuing advancement of technology, our deep-rooted worry that perhaps one day our cleverness will exceed our wisdom.
Because, like, he wanted to research this. Like, yeah, he did. He was in a frenzy when he researched this, and he's like, I'm not going to release this until I find a good reason for, like, using this or having this exist. And he's, like, just constantly trying to, like, figure out how the hell can I use this thing for good. And throughout the entire movie, you could tell he really does care.
Yes.
Especially in that one scene where he's literally saying how it's his job as a human being to, like, not use this.
The way he then just, like, wails and grabs at his hair.
Yeah.
Like, holy...
That wasn't even... it wasn't even melodramatic. It was just, like, you felt for the guy.
Like,
Why
I
did
remember,
I
like,
invent this?
Like, earlier on in the movie, you guys were occasionally cracking jokes, but then as soon as Serizawa's moment came in the lab, you two were dead silent.
Yeah, it was a very convincing scene, and I'm gonna say
it was written and acted very well.
He was by far the best actor.
Yes.
Yes, and also I remember when he's burning his notes. I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, you're burning the notes, but you still have them inside your head, which you said before. He's like, even if I burn the notes, it still lives with me. And as soon as he said, I want to dive down to the bottom of the ocean, I thought, oh man, is he gonna die? And then as soon as he brought out the knife, I was like, I knew it, but no!
I knew exactly he was gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't a surprise for me, but...
And then when he says, I hope you two will be happy,
that moment when you realize that he knew about it all along.
Yeah.
And I could tell, like, when he saw Ogata and Emiko, when she was, like, cleaning the blood, you could tell that was the double whammy. Not only did he find out that his fiancée betrayed him, but she's also in love with another man, and he handled it with dignity and class. It's like, what an amazing guy.
Yeah, he loves her, that he's willing to give up his happiness to ensure her happiness.
Yeah.
And that's real love.
And then when they take their hats off for him at the end and they salute him, I
Like-
was like, yes,
Like,
yes.
like the fact that in a series of, cyborgs and gods and, a three-headed abomination from beyond the stars that kills planets for fun, that the only one to ever successfully kill Godzilla in the original series is a one-eyed Japanese scientist who lives in terror of what he has created.
I mean, you could also argue that's a different type of Godzilla, too, because the other ones aren't exactly the same Godzilla.
I know,
No.
but the point still stands.
That's true. Also, I just love that intro shot of him.
With the sunglasses over the eye patch.
Like, obviously that's how sunglasses work.
I know. You guys were so worried that he was going to be like some sort of sinister
That's the
scientist
trope.
character.
That's
the
probably
trope.
misleading you on purpose.
Or
say that.
it created it, and people were giving evil scientists the eye patch, unironically.
I mean, I think that came more from, like, soap operas.
Yeah, and like he lost the eye from the war.
Oh.
Is that what
Yeah,
the
the
origin
character.
is?
Yeah, the character lost the eye in the war.
Oh, I didn't
Okay.
even know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
They never really addressed that, so I was wondering.
I think it's
No,
meant to
yeah.
be more implied. Because remember, this
Oh.
is just 9 years after a brutal war that had wrecked their country.
That is true.
Like, if you see
Yeah.
a guy with a random injury, like a missing arm or a missing eye, you can almost safely assume back then, yeah, he probably lost in the war.
Back then, it was probably more obvious than it is to us now.
I mean, I wasn't sure how old he was. He did seem like he was in his 30s or 40s.
I think he was a bit on the younger side.
Yeah.
They were sending some pretty young dudes out to fight towards the end.
Oy.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. The draft policy in Japan was probably different than the draft policy in the United States, no?
Oh, definitely.
Well, that's a long, complicated story to get into.
Oh.
But yeah, without Serizawa, his weapon, his sacrifice, this movie would have been, in my opinion, possibly forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his oxygen destroyer is what brings this full circle. You have the monster created by our most current dangerous weapon, the atomic bomb, the hydrogen bomb. And then you have a man who can stop it with an even more dangerous weapon. But instead of possibly continuing the cycle, he ends it by ensuring that weapon can never be recreated.
Because he got rid of the means to create it.
Including himself.
But exactly, like, think about the weapon is even more terrifying than an atomic bomb. Not even just because of, the idea that it can just liquefy, organic creatures, including ones that can shrug off any other weapons, but the fact that he was able to make it in a lab by combining various chemical compounds.
By himself.
He didn't need some massive breeding reactor to prepare the weapons. He didn't need, billions of dollars of infrastructure to create this. He made it by accident in a basement lab.
By himself.
Yep.
This weapon is terrifyingly easy to mass produce.
It is.
And that's probably what he realized.
And that's why he was going nuts, trying to figure out a good way to, actually use it for the, benefit of humanity. Because, that is terrifying. Quite literally one of the most terrifying things.
Hopefully it can't be made now.
And it comes back in a 1995 movie.
Really?
Whoa!
Not the weapon itself.
Oh.
But Serizawa's nightmare that it actually created a monster. Godzilla versus Destroyer. It is Godzilla, as he's dying from his nuclear heart going overload, he ends up fighting a monster created by the oxygen destroyer.
Really?
Oh, no.
I had a feeling there was going to be something with the oxygen destroyer somewhere in the lore.
I mean, that just goes back to, Godzilla being nature's response to mankind creating the bomb. Serizawa created the oxygen destroyer, so nature's gonna retaliate to that, too. Oh.
And, I know someone created this beautiful analysis. That scene when he's in Tokyo, when Godzilla first appears in Tokyo, at the end when they're diving, you see Godzilla in Tokyo Bay, resting. You guys were initially cracking jokes.
Yeah,
I really did not appreciate the laughs during this movie.
Oh, come on. There's gotta
some
be
parts
some
are cheesy
funny
and
scene.
cheap.
I mean, it's not that. It's like...
But, someone said, that moment where you actually see this monster that had burnt Tokyo to the ground.
Yeah.
Just sleeping peacefully in the bay. Someone pointed out, this is the moment when you realize that Godzilla himself is a victim of the bomb.
I mean...
I don't know if I saw that.
I mean, he was kind of just chilling on his own, in his own
He's
thing.
horrifically burnt and mutated by this weapon. He's in constant pain. And it's that pain that drove him to lash out. He behaves like an animal. What do animals do when they're in great pain? They lash out.
Did they address that he was always in pain in the movie? I think I missed
They
that
implied
line.
it with the fact that he looks like he's covered in nuke burns.
Yeah, in America that probably flew over people's heads.
Oh, yeah.
He was just chilling in his cave or whatnot, eating fish and someone.
He was just napping, I think, when they found him. He was just, resting.
And then the H-bombs obviously did what Nate described.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other characters we need to mention?
There is a couple minor characters.
Do we want to talk about the character of Godzilla?
Yeah, why not? Godzilla, in my opinion, that was good acting, because I'm assuming it's a guy in a suit.
Yeah, was
Yes.
the guy in a suit?
Haruo Nakajima.
Okay.
That's something I want to get into when we talk about the technical details of how this movie was made.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Godzilla himself is an important, not only is he the titular monster, but he is an important character. He is, as we have already stated, the embodiment of the horrors of the nuclear age.
Mm-hmm.
And not only is he just embodiment of that, but he is an embodiment of the pain that the nation has suffered in the past 10 years. The humongous fires aren't just evocative of the nuclear bomb, they're evocative of the Tokyo firestorms when we dropped conventional incendiary weapons on Tokyo and actually killed more people in one night than the bombs did together.
Oh
Jesus,
shit!
really?
Yes, do not firestorms in a city that was primarily made out of wood and paper at the time.
Oh god.
Oh.
There's this one
Like
movie.
like most of the time when you see these monsters, like when Godzilla normally attacks cities in later movies, it's normally just buildings crumbling and like people running. Oh, look out, this Godzilla!
Yeah.
But then in this, there are just people dying in the streets. The black and white, I believe, really added to the horror of the situation, and the fact that the city isn't just like being crumbled; it's burning.
Yeah.
And every single shot, you can just see the horizon engulfed by the flames. Like that is astonishing.
Mm-hmm.
Like those 8 minutes or so that Godzilla is rampaging in Tokyo, it's hell. It's like the closest you can get to hell on Earth in that moment. And it's just like something that I feel like they've been striving to recreate in later movies time and time again, and yet never quite reaching the same perfection they did.
I think that's because when they made this movie at the time, the rawness of those emotions were still there.
Exactly.
And you can't replicate that at all.
It was extremely personal to them.
What movie were you going to talk about, Mitch?
I mean, it's just a little side thing, but there's this one movie, I forget who made it. It's some animated movie from Japan that talks about World War II. And
Is it Grave of the Fireflies?
No, but that is another one I've been meaning to see. I forget. I think it's like, I can't remember the name of it, but it talks about this woman whose husband is who's in World War II. I'm just gonna straight up spoil it because I can't remember. At the end, like, she's an artist, her arm gets blown off. This is in the middle of the movie. She's trying to come to peace with it. Eventually she does, and she gets killed by a nuclear bomb regardless. Which is probably one of the most horrifying things I've seen.
Mm.
Granted, I haven't seen the actual movie itself, but I've seen like a very in-depth review of it. And it kind of reminded me of that.
Alright then.
Any other minor characters? Like the kid? What was his name?
Shinkichi.
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 I like how they kind of took him in after his family died.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
like they adopted him.
what was it, his mom and his brother?
I think,
Yeah.
or his brother and his sister-in-law or something.
It was probably his mom.
His caretakers.
Yeah.
His caretakers died, and Ogata took him. At least Ogata. I don't know about, Emiko.
I think it was
Oh, Emiko
Yamane. I
took
think it was
him, too.
Yamane that took him in.
Really?
Yes.
Well, yeah, he said that he would see to the boy's education.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And they actually mention him in like later movies in the 90s. They mention like some of the characters are actually like his grandkids.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Like Yamane's, or?
I think he ends up I'm trying to remember exactly, but like I believe he ends up becoming officially adopted and he continues the Yamane line.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Cool.
But yeah, like I think we want to get into the technical side of things now.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I know you guys were cracking some jokes at Godzilla's appearance in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Not
Like,
real-
well,
Well, it's not the appearance. It was
No.
the movements, because, like, there was some scenes where it was a little bit goofy, just how he
Yeah.
moved a bit.
like
But
when
that's that's due to how he was in a suit, and
like
he had
when,
to deal with that.
yeah,
But,
when the
like-
airplanes were coming in, like his arms were, he was trying to swat them, but he was missing them completely because he couldn't really reach well in the suit.
I was thinking more at the end when he just toppled over in the water after the oxygen destroyer.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, like how they accomplish this. Like I'm surprised that like you had to second guess about whether or not he was a guy in a suit. That's
Well, I
interesting.
knew he was a
That
guy
was
in
more
a
me.
suit.
I just
but-
wasn't sure if that was an urban legend or not.
But yes, Haruo Nakajima portrayed Godzilla in the suit. He was a tiny Japanese man, and that suit weighed 220 pounds.
Oh, shit. Wow.
Yes, I want to go into detail. This guy's work was insane. He played Godzilla for, like, what was it, 15 movies?
Oh, so this was his thing.
Well, a lot of people associate Haruo Nakajima as Godzilla. Like, all the other actors who came after him to put on that suit lived in his shadow. He was a black belt in, jitsu. He
awesome.
studied the movement of bears at the zoos in order to try to emulate Godzilla's movement as well.
Nice.
He
Nice
threw
character
himself
research.
into
He
it.
threw
Yeah.
himself into the work. Like, and this work was not easy. Like I said, the suit weighed 220 pounds, was not properly fitted to him, and
Why was it not properly fitted?
because I believe he was hired late into the process,
Oh, really?
That kind of reminds
or the suit was made early. Either way, it was only until later movies that they actually fit it to his body. But like, you can't see in that suit. you can hardly breathe in that suit. It gets to 120 degrees in there.
Oh,
After every take, they would drain a cup of sweat from that suit.
Oh.
And the thing is, in order to give this ponderous sense of Godzilla's size, what they would do is that he'd go in the suit and he would move like fucking crazy.
Well, yeah.
And then they'd play it in slow motion.
Yeah.
To give that sense of size. So, can you just imagine wearing something that's like twice your own body weight? You can't breathe, can't see, and you have to move like a maniac down a cardboard city street trying to make it look like that you're a monster. He would frequently pass out. And like there were some quite a few incidents. Like he didn't just play Godzilla. He also played Rodan. He played Mothra. He played Baragon.
Oh wow!
A bunch of these monsters that you plebes don't know about.
Hey, you're educating us, so we're sort of not plebes anymore.
But yes, he like one time he got cut really badly by a wire when he was playing Varan the Unbelievable. I believe during the filming, was it this movie, I believe, he got hot molten plastic from the explosives trickled down on his bare back.
Oh, Jesus.
They tell me they took him to a hospital.
This was 1954 Japan. I'm not sure if they had
Or
Medcare.
they took him to somebody.
They probably took care of it.
Yeah.
I believe he also got burns on his groin.
From what?
Ow.
I think it was a bad pyrotechnic problem.
Oh, ow.
Yeah, this guy was a hard worker.
I mean, I'd assume, obviously this movie, I'm assuming, just based on the look of it, that, the plasma was all After Effects, right?
Some of it was After Effects. Some of it, I believe, was water vapor.
Oh, really?
That makes sense.
Like, the scene when the towers are being melted, what they did is they made them out of wax, I believe.
Oh,
and they shone a studio light on them.
I would have thought it was, actual metal, and they just threw a blowtorch on it.
No, that would have been harder to do.
That's interesting, actually.
But, the work that they put into this. Of it. Like, Godzilla's atomic breath gets even better in later movies in terms of how they're able to capture it. Oh, man, there's so much to talk about here.
I like the miniature work. Like, you could tell
they
some
put
of these
a lot of detail.
Yeah.
Like, you could tell some of these were miniatures,
yes.
but, even then, they're still very, like you said, well-detailed.
Well, except the time where, was it the car or the bus that flipped over? That was the one time it was really obvious it was a miniature.
It was a little bit goofy, that was good.
They were considering for a while trying to see if they could make it stop motion like King Kong, but they realized, A, they didn't have the experts required to do it, because stop motion was basically in the hands of one or two really skilled dudes at the time, and B, it's expensive.
Yeah, it's really time-consuming.
The suit was much less expensive to pull off, and you have to give credit to the man. There are arguably 3 or 4 fathers of the Godzilla franchise. You have Ishirō Honda, who directed this movie. You have Tomoyuki Tanaka, who I believe either wrote it or produced it or both. Haruo Nakajima and Eiji Tsuburaya. He did the special effects for this movie.
Oh, cool.
He designed the suit. He made, he oversaw and directly helped make the miniatures, the props, all of this stuff, was his work.
So how do you feel about the movies of Godzilla that have come out more recently where he's computerized?
Oh.
Oh.
I sometimes can appreciate how they're able to pull off some stuff with CGI that would be downright impossible to pull off with suits. But the suits have been a staple of Godzilla for 60 years, and I hope they don't go extinct.
Yeah, practical effects are on the
rise.
I think this can be seen with
I
hate to say it, I think this can be seen with Shin Gojira, the 2016 movie that was directed by Hideaki Anno, who directed Evangelion. The CGI could be a lot more glaring when you have a lower budget, and I think it would have been less obvious if they had used a suit.
Oh my god, there's so many movies from the mid-2000s with awful CGI.
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh god. And then at the same time, Godzilla movies were still, plugging away at the good old suits. Yes. There's just a certain touch is the sense that cannot be fooled. That's what some smart, some smart Czech director said. And that's why certain things are always better to see as practical effects rather than CGI. So, it's one thing to make the settings or the backdrop CGI because, why you have to constantly just go to, the middle of Nevada to film some freaking the same boulders over and over again to try to replicate an alien world.
Yeah.
But, this is especially common in horror movies. As soon as the monster becomes CGI, it loses something.
I mean, there are some very decent examples of CGI. Some that are actually really well looking,
I know.
but
The good CGI is the kind of CGI you don't notice.
exactly.
Yeah.
And like
But-
that's extremely hard to do.
Exactly. Like the CGI of the American, like the newest American Godzilla movies, the one by Legendary Pictures. Like the CGI for that is amazing, and I appreciate it. The CGI for the 1998 Godzilla movie and Shin Gojira are far less good. There is one really good scene in Shin Gojira that I still love, though, which is also emulative of the firestorm attacks on Tokyo. But that's something for another time. We're talking about the OG Godzilla, not
Yes.
the new one.
So, what are some other tidbits about the technical effects?
The producer and the director at one point got questioned by the authorities.
Really?
Oh, for
Because they
what?
were standing on Tokyo Tower and they were talking to themselves and like making notes about like where they should have Godzilla walk around destroying stuff. And the guards overheard them and they're like, well then.
Oh no!
Stuff?
Exactly.
Oh my god, that one scene with like that just reminds me of the one scene with the radio announcer who's like on the tower or
That
something.
was dedication to journalism.
He's like, well, I guess I'm gonna die now. This is me signing off. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy's a real one.
Are you guys wondering, like, what were your opinion on Godzilla's roar?
Okay, see, I actually have some questions about that, but Julie,
Like,
first.
what about the sounds of it? How do you like it?
It was loud, so it was effective.
Like,
It was loud.
anything more? Like, like you guys have heard Godzilla's roar in other works of fiction, but this one sounds a bit different, doesn't
Was
it?
it metal scraping?
Yeah, see, that's what I've been trying to figure out. It sounded like a train almost.
What they did is they had a rubber glove and they rubbed a stringed instrument.
I knew it sounded like violin strings at some points!
I think it was something different, like a Japanese stringed
Oh.
instrument. They rubbed it and then they played the sound backwards, and that's how you get Godzilla's roar.
Ah,
Cool!
nice.
That's awesome!
I just fucking love it.
Yeah,
and like
that's
his
genius.
his footsteps.
Yeah.
what was that?
That, like, I'm not talking about how they simulated, but the fact that they designed it to sound like the dropping of bombs.
Oh, that's
Oh,
interesting. I do like.
I think they
roar.
I think they beat a drum for that.
I mean,
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
make sense. A giant drum would make sense.
Do you think that that definitely probably frightened some Japanese audience members when they heard that sound?
Probably.
Oh God.
Actually, when this first came out, a lot of people thought it was tasteless.
Really?
I could get
Yeah, I mean,
why.
hey, that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so close. Quite literally, some people would say that it's too soon.
Yeah.
And yet now it's considered not tasteless. It's considered one of the most telling damnations of nuclear power in modern culture.
I mean, we are
Not nuclear power. I'm talking the nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, we are also talking about the opinions of Americans. I don't know how many years.
No,
after.
dude. If the
Compared-
Japanese didn't like Godzilla, they wouldn't be making his movies all the time and
No, I'm talking
selling
about-
out like crazy.
No, I'm talking about the people back then who said it was tasteless due to the fact that it was like less than 10 years. That's what I'm comparing us
Oh.
to.
But I'm talking about like later on, Japanese opinions started becoming
Oh,
less
yeah.
and less mixed
Yeah.
about Godzilla.
Yeah, especially as time went on, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to talk about is, like, I love that roar, because, like, in horror movies and horror games and, a lot of horror stuff like that, they do try and make, like, sound effects originally, so it's usually, like, some sort of animal or some sort of, like, metal or
Exactly.
a mix of multiple that really, like, gets slowed down or twisted backwards or pitched up or down, and that's how, like, a lot of roars are made, and I found this one really cool.
I think it's definitely one of the, if not the most distinct, recognizable sounds of any like fictional creature.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who knows? Like, if you hear roar, is it King Kong's roar or something else? But if you hear Godzilla roar, you know instantly.
It's Godzilla.
So if say one day you were walking down the street minding your own business and you heard that Godzilla roar, what would you do?
I would.
Depends, what year is it?
Now, 2019, if in 2019 you heard Godzilla's roar coming from like a few streets away, what would you do?
I'd probably gawk and become overwhelmed with like ecstasy of the soul. And I'd probably just be standing there until I get stepped on.
I'd run. How about you?
I check, is this movie in color or black and white? Because that will tell me if he's somewhat friendly or not.
Not necessarily. Quite a few movies in the 80s he was an antagonist.
Yeah.
Then there was the your least favorite, the cartoon
There was a cartoon.
with Godzuki.
My least favorite is the 1998
Oh.
movie made by Roland Emmerich.
Oh, okay. I always thought you despised the cartoon because of Godzuki.
Well, I also despise Godzuki, but that's something else entirely.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Roland Emmerich movie. That is just the fucking worst.
Oh, wait, is that the one with Matthew Broderick?
Yep.
I've seen clips of that, but not the full thing.
It's garbage.
Okay.
It is absolute shit. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
That's the only airtime we're gonna give it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did they do the tail for Godzilla? Did they just like...
They
get
had...
an
The
animatronic,
tip had a string on it.
Yeah,
then you can
that
just
makes
pull
sense.
it.
And there was somebody hanging from the roof, like swinging it around and stuff.
I mean, one thing I do like about the tail is in the scene where it shows his tracks going into the beach, just to give I believe it was on Oda Island.
Odo Island.
You know, it just showed his little tail line, and I found that really cool, because they didn't have to do that, but they did. Which I found really interesting.
They did pay a lot of attention to detail. In later monster movies, such as, like, Gamera and stuff like that. Ooh, I wonder if I should put Gamera on the list next. That won't be my next movie.
Or will it?
We shall see.
But, like, for example, in, like, Gamera, Guardian of the Universe, like, in the behind-the-scenes features, you can see they were literally putting fake pieces of paper in the fake trash cans in the fake buildings.
Really?
Yes. Like, they don't fuck around with the detail.
I'm glad that they don't.
Especially, you know, they're already doing miniatures, why not go into massive detail?
Like, it's amazing the kind of stuff they do. Like, it's a mixture of suit acting, puppeteering, remote-controlled tanks.
Sounds like Muppeteering on steroids.
Oh, yeah. No, this is, years before Muppeteering.
Yeah.
So, like, in terms of the underwater scenes, what did they do?
For the scenes where you see him coming out of the water, they just had the guy in the suit.
What about the
Which
last
it
scene?
must be a terrifying experience.
Yeah.
Because one thing to be in a suit that's suffocating and way heavier than you. Now imagine being in a suit that's suffocating, hot, way heavier than you, and you're underwater.
He could have drowned.
Oh yeah, he almost drowned a few times.
Are you
Oh, shit.
serious? Jeez. I mean, I'm guessing it's not airtight.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Like,
But for underwater scenes, they simply put like a can't say filter exactly.
But they put something on the camera to give it the effect.
I think they like overlaid the footage with footage of water bubbling.
Speaking of, let's talk about the miniatures with like the little people. How'd they manage that? There was like people running through those towns. Obviously, when the towns were miniatures, how'd that work out?
Was it just probably a trick of editing?
It's
like
it's a trick
yeah.
that's actually been around since the original King Kong in 1933, where it's basically you play or project footage onto the set in a way that makes it so you can simulate people running through streets, even though the streets are in miniature. Like, that's how they're able to have Andero, watching in terror as Kong is battling the T-Rex in King Kong, even though, she's clearly in a miniature set, because King Kong, the actual monster, like the model for King Kong, is 18 inches high.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they would use like such tricks of light and like projection in order to have people running through these miniature cities.
When did King Kong come out?
1933.
Oh, I thought you said
1930
Godzilla. Sorry.
1933 is when King Kong came out. But I think I think that's something else I want to mention. This is like the only Godzilla movie for like decades, really, where you actually see humans in the same frame as like Godzilla's feet and stuff.
Yeah, because I thought that was
most of the
really
time
cool.
when people in Godzilla are on the same screen, what it is that he's in the background, like behind the hills or behind the city line, people are running. But in this movie, this is when you can actually see like his foot coming down and people are just barely missing getting hit and they're running in terror. Like, it's so... There can be a bit of a disconnect sometimes where it's almost as if they look... Like in later movies especially, growing up watching them, they almost felt like two different worlds. Because you would never see people directly interact with the monsters. Like, no one... I don't think it wasn't until like Godzilla versus Megaguirus that you ever actually see someone touch Godzilla.
Really?
Oh.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, I'd assume not many people would want to touch Godzilla.
Yeah, but like he almost feels like it's some sort of untouchable god almost in another world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how a lot of tropes that are associated with Godzilla were not in this one, or severely weakened, or outright like subverted.
Yeah, because it's the first one. And
Exactly, like the idea of Godzilla and the people pretty much being on like almost separate worlds. This one, you can see them almost getting squashed.
Mm-hmm.
He isn't just plugged away in a volcano or something. He's killed. It isn't the ingenious human way that they stop him is one of sacrifice and fear involving Serizawa's weapon. There are no other giant monsters that Godzilla fights. The acting is good. The human characters are great. And this is shit you don't see in later movies for such a long time.
And while we're on it, let's talk about the plot, because I felt the plot was pretty decent.
Yeah.
Like, especially for the first in 1954.
It was simple, but the way they wrote it, it worked because it hit you emotionally. And that's really all you want from a movie. You want it to make you feel something.
Yeah, like...
Yeah.
How long had monster movies been around at this point?
Are you talking about giant monster movies, which are called, like the term for giant monsters in general has started to become kaiju?
Yeah. But, like, just
Or
monster
daikaiju.
movies in general.
The first movie featuring stop-motion dinosaurs that I can think of was 1925's The Lost World, which was an adaptation of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story.
Oh.
I just thought, like, in terms of a monster movie perspective...
Where,
which
like, a
is
monster,
also-
like, rampage? Or are you talking about monster movies as we understand them?
Yeah, as we understand them.
As we understand them? King Kong.
Alright.
That's pretty much the first one where it's a giant monster.
When did Black Lagoon come out?
1954.
Really? Same year?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Huh.
hilarious.
Also same year, I believe, as Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. 1950 year was a good year for monster movies.
I actually haven't seen Black Lagoon, but I've heard a bunch of
Have
it.
you seen The Creature from the Black Lagoon?
No.
I guess that's going on the list.
Yay.
I'm tempted to watch it on my own, TBH.
Oh.
Alright.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll negotiate.
But then I'll never watch it.
But I just liked how, obviously the first, like, I'd say maybe a quarter or a third of it was just based on not showing him, because that was back in the days where you didn't show the monster.
Build suspense.
But
yeah.
it's not a frustrating kind either. Like
Yeah.
No,
It's
they,
like
they,
some
they
other
do it
movies.
just right.
Yeah, they give little hints, they give little sights and whatnot.
Footprints on the beach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
the
it,
typhoon.
they built like a mystery almost around
Mm.
it for like, at least in terms of the characters in the plot.
Now it would be like, show the monster in the first 5 seconds.
Or don't show them at all and just cock tease the viewers, like they did in the 2014 one.
See, I thought that was decent.
Oh.
I did not like the teasing at some parts.
Really?
Yeah.
But I just really appreciate...
I had been blue balled from seeing Godzilla in theaters for years, and then all of a sudden they just pull that trick.
That probably annoyed you a lot more than it annoyed other people.
Yeah.
It annoyed the Godzilla fans, such as myself, a
Yeah.
lot more.
Anyway, what were you gonna say, Mitch?
I just liked the mystery aspect, as I mentioned, because, these people had never seen anything like this before, especially in terms of, like, the fact that they're comparing Godzilla to a dinosaur, which it basically is. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
literally it at this point, isn't it?
Yeah,
A
he's
lizard.
no, not a lizard.
Well, yeah.
No, that's not.
Well, what is it?
That's how
What
I
is
saw
it?
him as.
Yeah, a lot of people associate him with either a dinosaur or one of the mammal-like reptiles that existed in the Permian era. Because, like, his legs are directly beneath him. Like, dinosaur hips, like, lizard hips splay out.
Yeah.
But, like, the mammal-like reptiles and the dinosaurs, their hips are more like that. It's more underneath them. Just like Godzilla. But on the other hand, dinosaurs can't breathe underwater. Dinosaurs, theropods don't have spines running down their back like that. And dinosaurs can't shoot nuclear plasma from their mouth.
I'd say that was more from the bombs than...
Yeah, a lot of people argue it was the bombs that gave him some weird abilities.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, assuming that's my assumption, but I just liked that.
And it's also kind of funny that they kept on saying the Jurassic era was 2 million years ago. I'm not sure if it was believed back then or if they were even just back then still making a pretty bad scientific error.
Probably that, which actually is kind of interesting, because my next point was going to be how much they tried to justify all the science stuff in this movie. Like, just going from, the existence of Godzilla to the investigation of Godzilla, the use of, like, what are they called? Radio...
Geiger counters.
Geiger counters, and, obviously the oxygen destroyer, which the justification for that was kind of weird in my opinion.
I think it helps bring us closer to the movie, in a way.
I think so, too. I just found that kind of cool, because I can understand why
especially
you liked
considering
this.
a lot of the quote-unquote justifications tie into the fears of the nuclear era, like the discovery of the strontium-90. Strontium-90 is something that's only produced by our weapons.
Yep.
Were there any scientific consultants on this film?
Probably not.
Okay.
This was kind of before scientific consultants were a thing.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't, just the way they described the oxygen destroyer.
Oh yeah, that it turns the atoms into a fluid?
That was so weird. That was so, like, what the hell is the water made of? Like, it sure as hell isn't pure hydrogen.
No, God, no.
Liquid hydrogen would be extremely cold. Like, it'd be like, wouldn't it be single kelvins?
Light a match, drop it in there.
Oh my god. That would be like an explosion, like,
yes.
bigger than TNT, I'm guessing.
No.
Well, I mean, like, hydrogen is extremely flammable.
It's extremely flammable, but you're not going to get an explosion like TNT.
Well, I mean, like, liquid hydrogen.
You're going to get more of a fiery flare up that turns into water vapor.
Can you imagine doing that in the sea though? After Sarizawa's oxygen destroyer was put in the ocean, though.
Oh God!
I don't think it turned into pure hydrogen. I don't know what.
No, but
happened.
if it did though, can you imagine?
Well, I agree with Nate. Like, that would be incredible, but there's no way it was pure hydrogen. We just have no idea what the hell it was. And I want to know, what's the radius on that thing? We never got a clear, like.
I guess it really depends on where the wind is going or the current.
That's true. That is very true. That was just really oddly said, but I just like this focus on science because, like you said, it brought people closer to the movie in a way.
And because, like, our fears were about our scientific discoveries.
It also kind of, like, reminds me of there'll be a lot of BS explanations in horror movies and, like, movies in general with, like, inventions and sciencey stuff. Like, they'll give some explanation that doesn't, A, answer anything, and or B, gets it completely wrong or just doesn't make any sense. Like, the oxygen destroyer is a minor thing in terms of that, but there's some really bad contestants when it comes to explanations of their science.
I think what is more important are the effects of what is being shown rather than the genuine causes.
Yeah, I mean,
like we're less worried about how the oxygen destroyer exactly works, and more about the fact that it's easily producible and has devastating effects.
Yeah, that is very true. I just thought that was an interesting point that it does focus on a lot of science. You know, also with the fact that almost all of its, like, major cast is either military people or scientists themselves.
Yes, you have scientists, you have the guy who works for the South Seas Company, you have
the journalist to some extent.
And then you also have the journalist in the American version. And the journalist character's name is Steve Martin.
No way!
Yeah, this was years before Steve Martin, the actor, became a thing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Can we talk about one of the less scientific parts of this movie, but still probably one of the most impactful, the female choir?
Ah, yes.
Oh my god, yes. Like, I remember, like, I still get chills every time I hear that bit. And you guys were dead silent.
It reminds me of a song that we almost sang at a chorus concert at our high school called Mae. And it was a song written after what happened with the typhoon and the earthquake in Japan.
Oh,
it was an emotional song, and we didn't end up singing it because for high school it was a really complicated arrangement. But it's always really interesting to hear Japanese voices sing because, you know, the pronunciation of their vowels is so different than, you know, singing in America or the UK. And just hearing those schoolgirls sing, it was like, wow, Japanese singing is really beautiful.
I think this adds in, like, building off of that, I think this is another thing that really gives this movie so much more impact than other monster movies. And what makes it so immortal is we focus on the devastation in its wake, on the human devastation. It isn't just like, oh, cool, look, he took a bite out of Tokyo Tower, or something like that. It's the hospital scenes. It's the bleeding people in crowded, rubble-strewn rooms. It's the crying of the children. It's the
death of Sarizawa.
It's the
humanity.
That scene still gets me every time, with the kid getting waved over the Geiger counter and the doctor just slowly shakes his head at Emiko.
Yeah.
Because they both know he's not going to live till the next morning.
Yeah.
He's not even really responsive to the Geiger counter, is he? Like, I didn't see his eyes following
The kid probably doesn't even realize what's happening.
Yeah.
And then, like, the choir itself, like, that's something that happens after major disasters. People, like,
sing songs, yeah.
And, like, that is something that you don't see in King Kong. It's not something you see in Gorgo. It's not even something you see in later Godzilla movies, or in, like, Gamera or anything like that. Like, with the exception of perhaps the 90s trilogy of Gamera movies, with the impact on people. And this is why it's so great.
It also speaks a lot to, like, music therapy, about how during times of, like, emotional trauma or physical trauma, people often turn to music as not a substitute for medicine, but something to supplement their healing process.
Mm-hmm.
And it just shows you that, like, this, in the movie, for the Japanese people, was like a moment of catharsis and a moment of prayer. And it's a quiet moment, and they did it beautifully. It was beautifully simple.
This movie focused a lot less on Godzilla and more on the actual people affected by Godzilla.
Yeah, if it was just Godzilla, it definitely wouldn't have had as much of an impact as it did.
Oh,
But like the people, it focuses on the people he steps on.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing I think that it makes Godzilla far superior to like King Kong. Of who he has fought.
What?
You didn't know that King Kong fought Godzilla?
Oh no, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
I
know that,
misheard that. You showed me that.
Yes. Have you seen King Kong versus Godzilla?
Nope, who wins?
I
Kong.
think it's technically
bullshit.
ambiguous.
No. It's a urban legend that Kong only wins in the U.S. version and Godzilla wins the Japanese version. But Godzilla and Kong wins both times, and it's bullshit. I'm sorry. Oh, look. Oh, you might be smarter than Godzilla. Good luck using your brains against the nuclear flamethrower in his mouth. Oh, wow. Look, you kidnapped a woman and climbed the Empire State Building? Look at this guy. He burnt Tokyo to the ground. In one of the most horrifying sequences put the monster movie film.
Nate is very invested in Godzilla.
He's very fired up.
I'm hoping the rematch in 2020 goes better.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that what Dee was telling me you were freaking out about?
No.
Movie?
This current movie that's coming up, the new one is Godzilla King of the Monsters, where he's going to be fighting King Ghidorah.
Ah, that's what you're freaking
Godzilla's
out about.
arch nemesis, who has been his arch nemesis since 1965 or 1964.
Really? So
Yes.
Like 10 years after the original.
Mm-hmm. That's the movie that marks Godzilla transition into a hero. King Ghidorah is a three-headed dragon who goes from world to world killing for fun. He wipes out entire civilizations for the hell of it.
And the motherfucker
And
Earth
Earth
has
is
arms.
and Earth is his next target. And is the original movie starts out with Godzilla and Rodan. Like Rodan's a giant pterosaur who's also a famous movie monster. They're like fighting, and then Mothra comes along and tries to convince them to fight Ghidorah, but like they both don't give a shit about humans. They don't see why they should care. And then like Mothra goes to fight Ghidorah alone. She's getting her ass kicked, and that's when Godzilla and Rodan come in.
Oh, I never knew Mothra was a she.
Yeah, Mothra's a she.
Huh.
She's a goddess.
Oh, cool. Of what?
Peace.
In which religion?
Her own religion. She's the supreme deity of her own religion.
Oh, and who follows her?
The people of Infant Island.
Okay, that's
She has twin priestesses that are 6 inches tall.
Oh yeah,
That's
I heard
kinda
about
cute.
them.
You need to watch more of the 60s Godzilla movies. I think you would like them.
Yeah, I think I'd like the Mothra one.
Mm-hmm. Like Godzilla music, not just like the themes, but like there's a lot of good singing in these movies as well. Like we've been talking about the choir in this one, but like Mothra's song is really good as well.
Oh, cool. All right. Anything else on the list we want to mention? I see we still have some things that aren't crossed off. Like we've gotten through a lot.
Yeah.
That's
There's
pretty
so
awesome.
much to cover. I love this.
One thing I liked is how Godzilla in this movie I mean, I've only seen like one, maybe a little bit of two, but like, compared to like the ones I have seen, I like how Godzilla started off as like an old legend already around, and while he wasn't Godzilla itself, like as we saw in the movie, like he still was a presence.
In later movies in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and the 90s, they don't really focus on the legend part of him. A lot more focus on like the nuclear age sciencey part of Godzilla. Yeah. But recent movies have returned to those roots and portraying him as almost like a deity brought to life. Like they've started making it, and the recent movies they discovered that Gojira in the language of Oto Island means God incarnate.
One thing I wanted to ask you, you know the dance that they were doing to try to like
I don't
cast
know
Godzilla out? Well, no. You know how after the dance was done, they the wind started blowing through the trees very violently?
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the implication that the dance actually summoned Godzilla, right?
No,
or that
was supposed to deter him.
But like something that they focused on in the first Godzilla movie that they've only been focusing on in like the new millennium of Godzilla movies is his like there is something that feels almost like an angry god about him, like the connection to weather. Like in the newest ones, like his coming is often preceded by like a tsunami or violent storms. Like you never see him really without like horrific weather around him now. In the
sounds like
ones.
Poseidon almost.
Poseidon wishes he could be Godzilla.
I mean, like, yeah, like, I'd have to assume even just him walking
I'm
would
pretty
mess with water currents as well.
There are so many... not really, actually. We have naval vessels more massive than him, and they don't really mess with currents. It's just more of, like, the implied sheer power around him.
That's true.
Oh, it's kind of funny that you mentioned Poseidon. Godzilla has naturally had a crap load of spin-off materials. You know, the movies, comic books, and stuff like that. He was actually in Marvel Comics, actually.
Really?
Yeah, he
which
fought.
series?
He had his own series in the 70s. He fought the Avengers and the Fantastic Four and S.H.I.E.L.D. at the same time.
Did he defeat them all?
They were stalemating, basically.
Oh.
Like, literally, there's literally a scene where he's pushing against the Empire State Building, and Thor, the god of thunder, is pushing back the other side.
Oh my god.
Thor, who's usually considered the strongest Avenger, hits Godzilla as hard as he can, like his most powerful attack, and it only creates a cut on Godzilla.
Oh
Like,
no!
he literally hypothesizes that Godzilla is stronger than the world serpent Jormungandr.
All that for
Stronger
one
than
drop
all
of
of
blood.
Asgard. Wow.
Like, he's kicking their asses. And then, like, a little boy that he had befriended when he got shrunk down, long story, convinces him to leave. And so he... Oh, there's also a bit where J. Jonah Jameson curses him out. JJJ, like, pokes his head out the window and he starts cussing. And then Godzilla literally looks at him and they're at eye level because he's in the Daily Planet, Daily Bugle building. And J. Jonah, he's like, ah! And they just kind of, like, quiets down when he realizes that Godzilla is actually looking his way, and he just kind of, like, slinks back into the window.
Oh my god. Like Homer Simpson shrinking back in the bushes.
Give me pictures of Godzilla!
Oh, actually, Spider-Man does snap a picture of Godzilla as he's leaving.
That must have made a hell of a picture for the front page of the Daily Bugle. Oh my god.
But yeah, and also, like, in another comic, not Marvel Comics, but, like, literally, I think there was a comic where Godzilla was fighting the Greek pantheon.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How'd that go?
I don't know the conclusion. They also wrote a series where Godzilla fell into hell and fought his way out.
Doom guy?
Basically.
Yeah.
Doom guy is basically if you condense Godzilla into a human-sized human thing.
I want to see that fight.
Or Godzilla, like, they're basically like, oh, come on. Why would they turn against each other? They're of the same soul. Godzilla, Godzilla is basically a giant radioactive dinosaur Doom guy.
That's an interesting description.
Alright then, I think it's time for our final thoughts on the movie.
Alright.
For final thoughts, I thought this movie was great. Like I said, I wasn't expecting too much, but it is nice to see the original of something, even, especially for as long as it's run on, almost like, how many years now? Like, over 60 years?
65.
65 years. This movie can retire now. That's incredible.
I hope it doesn't retire.
It's a great show of, like, what made this movie great and why it's lasted so long.
I very much agree with Mitch. This was a very good movie, and it surpassed my expectations, and I would definitely watch this movie so you can understand the pop culture phenomenon that is Godzilla. Don't start with any of the other movies. Watching this one, it'll take you by surprise, and it'll make you realize why so many people are fascinated with it, because it's not just a monster movie, it's a monster movie with a lot of heart behind it, and honestly, I can't understand how something could even come close to topping this, because this movie is pretty darn perfect.
Also, watch with the subtitles.
Yes, don't watch the English dub. Please watch with the subtitles out of respect for Japanese filmmakers.
And as for my final thoughts, I don't know what I can say that I haven't said before. This movie and the franchise that has birthed has been a huge part of my life. I love Godzilla. I love the movies. I love the message. At first, I only liked it because he was a dinosaur that could shoot lasers from his mouth, because that was something that a 6-year-old kid would like. But as I've grown, my appreciation for it has only deepened as I realize the messages that Godzilla brings with him and the history of the people that created him. It is honestly one of my single favorite franchises, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Oh. That's a good note to end on for this episode.
Yeah.
Alright, so next episode...
What are we watching next?
It's my turn to pick.
What are we watching yet?
Alright, I am so excited because, like Nate, I'm going to have a big fan moment. It is going to be another black and white movie. Guys, our next film is going to be the first Beatles movie, A Hard Day's Night.
Never heard of it, actually.
I will request for this one, Nate, that we watch this one with subtitles because Liverpool accents and Northern English accents are very muddy, so sometimes the words get slurred, and I feel like we'll need the subtitles for this one.
All right.
Okay, so that concludes our newest episode of How Have We Not Seen? Thank you for listening as always, and we will be back with A Hard Day's Night for the next episode. Thanks for listening, guys.
See you later.
Sayonara.
Bye. That's an interesting description. Anything else?
Can I finally list all the Godzilla movies in order of release so I can show off?
Alright, show off, fine.
Gojira. Then Godzilla Raids Again.
Hold on, you have to list the years, too.
Alright then. Godzilla, released in 1954. Godzilla Raids Again, released in 1955. King Kong vs. Godzilla, released in 1962. Godzilla vs. Mothra, also known as Mothra vs. Godzilla or Godzilla vs. The Thing, released in 1964. And then, in the same year, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, also known as Ghidra, the three-headed monster, released in 1964 as well. Then in 1965, you have Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, also known as Invasion of the Astro Monster. Then in 1966, you have Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, where he fights Ebirah, also known as Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. And then in 1967, you have Son of Godzilla, which was released in 1968, which is pretty much what it sounds like. Godzilla adopts something of a similar species to himself. Then, in 1968, you have Destroy All Monsters, one of the single greatest Godzilla movies ever made. You guys need to watch that. I'm probably going to put it on the list. Then, in 1969, there was Godzilla's Revenge, also known as All Monsters Attack. Worst movie ever made in this particular franchise. Then, in 1971, you have Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, also known as Godzilla vs. Hedorah, where he fights a monster made from pollution. Really weird. I don't want to talk about it. Then there's Godzilla vs. Gigan, where he and Anguirus, the monster that he fights in Godzilla Raids Again, who later becomes his closest ally, end up fighting against Gigan, who is teamed up with King Ghidorah. Then in 1973, there is Godzilla vs. Megalon, where Gigan teams up with Megalon, so Godzilla teams up with the android Jet Jaguar to fight them off. Then 1974 marks Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, where a monster pretends to be Godzilla. Turns out it's actually a machine created by aliens who are trying to invade Earth. Godzilla ends up teaming up with a Shisa, which is a mythological creature from Okinawan folklore. The creature gets waken up by a prophecy, and he and Godzilla team up and kick Mechagodzilla's ass. Then, 1975, you have Terror of Mechagodzilla. The aliens rebuild Mechagodzilla. Godzilla fights it again, but this time Mechagodzilla has an alloy in the form of a aquatic dinosaur called Titanosaurus, and there's no King Shisa this time. Godzilla wins, but it's by the skin of his teeth, and this marked the end of the Showa era for Godzilla movies. When this movie was 1975, Godzilla would not return until the 1984 movie, also called Godzilla, but also known as Return of Godzilla or Godzilla in 1985 when it was released in the United States. This one marked the return of Godzilla as a bad guy. And this is when he is on his own, he fights Japan, he gets thrown into a volcano, and he doesn't come back until 1989's Godzilla vs. Biollante. Godzilla's vs. Biollante marked the appearance of an original monster called Biollante, which is a plant-based creature created in tandem with Godzilla's cells. Super underrated, marked the introduction of another fan-favorite character named Meiki Segusa. You guys should also check that one out. Then 1991 saw the movie Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, where King Ghidorah is returned, but unfortunately, instead of being the space dragon that goes from planet to planet killing everybody, it's a genetically engineered creature that it involves time travel. It's weird. A lot of people like it. I don't like it that much. It's when they made Godzilla 100 meters tall instead of 50 meters tall. Then you had 1992's Godzilla vs. Mothra, which introduced the monster Batra. Batra and Mothra eventually team up to throw Godzilla into the ocean. Then 1993 saw the movie Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, which is where humans build their own version of Mechagodzilla to kick Godzilla's ass. It fails. Also marks the first and last appearance of Godzilla in that particular continuity, known as the Heisei continuity. Then 1994 sees Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, which is when 1993's movie Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 also reintroduced the idea of a baby Godzilla. Godzilla adopts him. 1994, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Space Godzilla comes, takes the baby, kicks Godzilla's ass, goes to Yokohama, sets up shop. Humanity builds their own machine from the scraps of Mechagodzilla called the Mogera. Mogera and Godzilla team up to defeat Space Godzilla. 1995, Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. Godzilla, his nuclear heart is now going into overload, and he will die, and people are worried that when he dies, he's going to take the world with him. In the meantime, his son, who is now starting to become close to fully grown, ends up fighting a monster called Destoroyah, who was created from the same oxygen destroyer that had killed the original Godzilla in 1954. Godzilla arrives just in time to see Destoroyah kill his son, and so he takes on Destoroyah himself, kicks his ass, and then dies, but thankfully, instead of burning down the planet, his radiation floods into the baby Godzilla and resurrects him as a fully grown Godzilla. Then there were 4 years of quiet. I'm not counting the 1998 Roland Emmerich movie. That one was cancer. But it was so bad that it literally brought back the original Godzilla franchise in Toho when they made Godzilla 2000, also known as Godzilla Millennium, even though it was released in 1999. This one marked Godzilla fighting yet another monster made from his own DNA, a alien parasite called Orga. Then you had in 2000 and, well, actually just like 2001, you saw the release of the movie Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. This one reintroduced King Ghidorah as a mystical guardian. I don't like that, but otherwise this movie's really good because this one, like, the movies that came out after Godzilla vs. Asteroid were all, like, reboots, constant reboot, where each one ignores all of the movies except for the 1954 one. The 1954 one was the basis, and each movie is almost just like the standalone sequel, so to say, in the franchise. 2001's Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack introduces the idea of Godzilla, the original one, being resurrected by the souls of all those Japan killed in World War II. And they're coming for vengeance because Japan is forgetting about all the awful shit they did. So Mothra, Baragon, and King Ghidorah fight Godzilla, and even though Godzilla managed to kill all of them, he is eventually defeated. 2002 brought in Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, where Godzilla fights a giant radioactive supersonic dragonfly that was created from a mixture of his own DNA and the fact that someone accidentally opened up a portal to the past when they were trying to kill Godzilla with a black hole weapon called Dimension Tide. Then, 2003 saw Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. This one is also a direct sequel to the 1954 one, where they take Godzilla, the original Godzilla's bones and use it as the framework to make a Mechagodzilla called Kiryu. Kiryu ends up fighting the second Godzilla, but he accidentally reawakens, and they have to put him back under control, and eventually they manage to wound Godzilla. Then, in a change of pace, the next movie, Godzilla Tokyo SOS, also released in 2003 and 4, ends up becoming a sequel to Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, where Kiryu and Mothra team up, and they finally put Godzilla away in the ocean for good. But Kiryu sacrifices himself because they're like, you can't disturb the bones of the dead, so Kiryu decides to stay in the ocean to make sure the second Godzilla doesn't come back. And then 2004 marked Godzilla Final Wars, which is when they brought back just about everybody in like a big budget, super crazy movie that involved badass martial arts, cheap CGI, good monster suits, and like incredibly batshit insane fight scenes. Oh, and also Don Fry, the MMA fighter. As yet another fan favorite character, Captain Gordon. Then there was a long lull of 10 years. And then in 2014, we got the new movie made by Legendary Pictures, titled Godzilla, which has Bryan Cranston. In that case, he fights the Mutos. Then, 2 years pass, 2016, we get Shin Godzilla, another really good movie despite the crappy CGI in places. Then, 2017 sees the release of the god-awful anime movie Godzilla Planet of the Monsters. Then, 2018 sees the release of Godzilla City and the Edge of Battle, a sequel to the other anime one, right? And then 2019, earlier this year, saw the release of Godzilla the Planet Eater, which also has King Ghidorah and is absolute garbage. And then, later this year, we will be seeing Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I hope the two of you accompany me to see it in IMAX.